Hey Las Vegas, Jesse here. At the end of today's episode, I have a sponsored segment with Holly Urker, luxury real estate advisor at IS Luxury. And today we're getting into one of the biggest debates in vintage home buying. Do you gut it or do you protect what's original? This conversation is brought to you by Holly Urker at IS Luxury. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're diving into a strange incident with ICE at the Las Vegas airport, explaining why Nevada still doesn't have a permanent federal prosecutor, and taking a look at how Vegas rents managed to rise nearly 20% faster than LA's over the last 7 years. Our Keep It Local writer, Melinda Shekels, and criminal defense attorney David Figler join me to break it all down. It's Tuesday, July 21st. I'm Jesse Merrick, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Shout out to all of you out there listening to us. Before we get today's convo rolling, I've got a favor to ask you. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey and would really help us out if you took it. This is our chance to learn more about you and what you want from us here at CityCast Las Vegas so that we can serve you and Vegas better. If you took it last year, please do it again because we can't use last year's data anymore. So if you're down to share your thoughts, go to citycast.fm/survey to take it. We did time it out and it only takes 7 minutes. And for your time, you'll be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and some CityCast swag as well. So again, to take that listener survey and help us out, go to citycast.fm/survey. All right, David and Melinda, thanks for joining us. How you guys doing today?
So good, Jesse. It's Tuesday, my favorite day of the week by far.
There you go.
Not Monday.
I like it.
I'm always happy to be here, Jesse. I'm just happy to be alive. I love talking Vegas, so thanks for having me back.
Of course, you are always welcome. You know that. And one thing that was really cool is we kind of threw out the welcome mat for a lot of elite female athletes, from the Olympics and stuff this weekend with She Weekend down on the Strip, brought to you by a bunch of different brands, but, headed by Flavor Flav. It was super cool to see all that. Melinda, I know you had a front row seat to it all as you were down there covering it. What was it like for you kind of being there for it all and your thoughts on the experience of it?
Yeah, I was down there covering it for People magazine, which was kind of surreal by itself. But the fact that Flavor Flav, has become one of the biggest advocates for women's sports, for the rapper from Public Enemy, is also a very surreal moment by itself. In fact, the New York Times even wrote an article, the headline, "Women's sports needs more advocates, but is Flavor Flav really the best that we can do?" I think maybe that's a little bit, it's a harsh commentary a bit, but we're thankful for the advocacy. But getting to meet and see the Olympians there was a really special moment. I had never seen a gold medal up close.
Yeah,
it was a
they're
really
crazy
collection. It was an incredible collection of athletes, and having them be in Vegas and getting to experience, MGM Resorts put on this great party for them, with Flavor Flav. So all the way around, it was really great. And they got to interface with a lot of really big brands. Dove was one of the big sponsors for the weekend. Delta was one of the big sponsors. And, this can be very important for female athletes to get these sponsorships because some of them are working 2 and 3 jobs to just support their sport.
David, I know you didn't get a chance to go down there, but obviously you were keeping tabs on it all. What did you think about the whole production of all, the event, and Flavor Flav, doing his thing? I know you know Flav.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, Flav is a mensch when it comes down to it. So I get how some people might be like, why him? But I will say that he is a champion for underdogs, and he is a great hype man, and I think he proved it once again. And he did it for his hometown, Las Vegas. We get some of the accolades for being welcoming and hospitable to these athletes who, weren't getting the respect that they deserve, I believe, from all quarters. And, here in Vegas, they got it. So it was fun watching the videos pop up, seeing Flav be a little humbled, which was kind of nice too. But, even shout outs at the Sphere from, I guess it was the Backstreet Boys. They were like, pointing it out and the crowd went crazy, and pointing out Flav and the crowd went crazy. I mean, that's the good stuff of Vegas. That's, as much as we're cynical about so many things, Vegas does have great qualities, and this was definitely a weekend that proved it.
Yeah, we put on for them. That's one of the things I think I've said multiple times. Like, I think our city has been a champion for women's athletics as a whole. So just overall, like, a really cool weekend for them. And who knows, maybe it's something we see come back in the future. All right, so let's dive right into it with the big-time controversy over at the Las Vegas airport over the weekend with ICE. David, what went down and what the heck is going on?
Yeah, this is going to be one of those file under, we know what we know, and we're probably never going to know anything more. What we do know is that on Monday, July 13th, around 6 o'clock, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police got called that there was a disturbance over at Harry Reid International Airport. We pick it up there from some folks who were videotaping. We don't know anything about what happened kind of before the videotape. What we do know is that two people looking like normal tourists traveling in hoodies and face masks with no discernible identification were tackling a 57-year-old man named Phu Nguyen. He is from Vietnam, apparently, but maybe also Australia. Anyway, the allegation is that he had overstayed a visa, that he didn't have any kind of criminal history here. He owned a business, some other things that have kind of come out about this gentleman. But the video shows these two folks, again, in hoodies and no discernible law enforcement identification, kind of tackling him while he was sort of crying out. They got at least one handcuff on him. The video also depicts what looks like a TSA agent telling people to kind of back away, that this is law enforcement. People were demanding to know what law enforcement, what was going on, etc. The two individuals walk away, leaving the guy with the handcuff on him. And then Metro does show up and they basically explain, yeah, we think those were ICE agents, and they sort of abandon their detainment mid-detaining, and that there's nothing more to see here. Then the Homeland Security puts out a press release, I guess basically the next day, saying, yeah, we got that guy when he landed in Los Angeles and we took him into our custody. They also called all the people who were just sort of filming away of what was kind of a bizarre event at the airport agitators. They call them agitators.
They attach that tag.
I hate
what?
that. Yeah. It's just like, come on, bro. Like, just... They're people, just citizens recording something that seems weird and is weird and shouldn't be normalized.
Yeah, when two people in plain clothes tackle somebody, and you hear someone screaming, your human instinct kicks in of trying to help someone. In that case, getting it on video.
Especially in an airport. I mean, where exactly these types of things are frightening because you don't know, we're dealing with air travel, right, as well. I mean, you're in a federal area, correct? Yeah, this is just so disturbing on so many levels.
My read on it, obviously, the shock of, wait, what is going on? Looked like the guy in it was wearing, a fake mustache, or at least looked to be.
It looked like a fake mustache, or a really bad mustache choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just so odd. Swiping at the camera, you're like, what exactly is going on here? You can see what looks like a badge, I think, on the woman when she goes to, get up and walk away, but it's also, again, why not flash the badge to somebody? Let it be known who you are before doing something like this. It just seems like, we can debate whether it's right, wrong, any of those types of things. But if you're going to do something like this, especially at the airport, it seems like there was not good planning put into this whole deal. I'm just curious, for you, obviously you're a criminal defense attorney. You're very familiar with the law. What are the things that you can do legally? What are your rights in a situation like this? Maybe as someone who's being detained, or just even as a bystander, let's say for the guy that was filming it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it does kind of harken back to my initial statement, which is we don't really know how this even started to go down. Was this someone who was on their radar? Was it someone who was stopped simply because of the way he looks or maybe the way he talks? We don't know any of that stuff. Jesse, when my friends or clients basically say, what should I do when I get stopped by law enforcement? My advice always to them is don't fight them in the streets. That's for me to deal with when we get to the court if you're arrested or given a citation. There's a process. There is what we call due process, right? So I know with a great deal of confidence that if one of my friends or clients is being detained or arrested, that there is a process to do it in a very cool and regulated way, through the court system. I still give that advice to people when they're stopped by someone who is detained by someone who is indicating that they're from ICE. I mean, you're not supposed to fight law enforcement officers in the field for sure. That's always bad advice. You don't have a right to start scrapping with somebody who is law enforcement. Yeah. But I don't have the second half of that equation anymore where we know it'll be okay because we'll work through it if you were wrongly being detained or whatever. In a court proceeding, because we don't know what court proceedings follow. I mean, this is so Wild West. This is so rogue. This is so Like, we don't have to answer to you. We don't have to follow any kind of actual protocols or procedures. We don't have to pay attention to typical and traditional court proceedings. I mean, this is just chaos in the middle of our airport where, people want to know that they could come and go with impunity to, feed our economy.
Yeah, it just reads like a huge safety issue to me. It's like we're all taught to see something, say something, right? But in this instance, we're not taught to do that, right? We're taught that we could potentially be as a bystander, as an observer, even documenting what's going on. We could be, hurt or injured or brought into this as agitators, so to speak, right?
Exactly. And that's my thing too. Like, I wonder, just again, like, my instinct is like, okay, if something like that's going on and you as a bystander jump in to try and help because you don't think that these people are, officers of any sort, like, then you're wrapped up in this thing when you think you're just trying to be a good Samaritan to help somebody. I think that's something that is insane. And then on Monday, some interesting stuff came out as well from a private meeting, with Joe Lombardo and a bunch of his supporters back on July 2nd. And the Nevada Independent reported actually that Joe Lombardo said, quote, "If I didn't have a relationship with Donald Trump, ICE would be walking down Las Vegas Boulevard." Now, I want to make sure I read the first part of the quote as well before we really start to dig into this to give the full scope of it. He did say, quote, "Some people may chastise me because they know I have a relationship with Donald Trump, but I think it's important to have a relationship with the person in charge. No different than your commanding officer, right? If there's a stalemate because you're adversarial to your commander, you won't get anything done." So just kind of wrapping your head around an entire quote there from Joe Lombardo. Do you think it's true what he's alluding to is the relationship with him and that kind of working in hand to keep ICE off of the strip? Melinda, like, when you hear that, how do you react to that?
I think the comment is also troubling. It says in essence that he's kind of brokering through a close relationship. He's brokering us to have less ICE participation in the city. And it feels like a lot of campaign rhetoric, that one does, to me, because it just really, it's kind of say like he's protecting us, but not protecting us. It was very much playing both sides of the fence, which we've known Governor Lombardo has been known to do, pretty actively with the Trump administration. Yeah,
trying to distance himself with Trump, but then also saying we're buddies too. Like, that's,
Yeah, I mean, that is not uncharacteristic of Governor Lombardo. But I think that the comment in general as a response to this is also troubling, in a city that's built on tourism, built on people coming here. And we've seen, a dramatic drop off in people coming because of potential fears.
Yeah, I know our Canadian friends aren't taking much solace in Joe Lombardo's words. Look, it is definitely a pitch to maybe people on the fence or even some Dems that, hey, if you think it's bad now, which it is, like, maybe they're not as visible as they are in other cities, like in Minnesota or, other parts of the country that voted against Trump. I mean, Nevada went for Trump this time. But it is happening. I mean, make no mistake, the amount of arrests in our state, in Las Vegas, of people or detention of people or deportation of people, they're not keeping accurate records, which is also troubling. Anecdotally, a lot of lawyers who are in this realm are reporting that it is spiking like out of control. So, I mean, what Lombardo is saying is like, yeah, it may be very bad right now, but it'll be even worse if I wasn't here. And that is troubling simply because it's like, it is admitting that this administration doesn't care about the tourism impact in Las Vegas of these type of high-profile snatch and grabs, right? And to have it happen in the airport, I haven't heard a comment from Governor Lombardo yet, but I do know that when he was at Metro, and he also supports Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department cooperating with ICE to arrest all these people in the jail system, et cetera. So look, maybe it could be even worse, but that doesn't change the fact that it's pretty bad right now and that, Lombardo or no other Republican is kind of stopping that plight as evident in this particular airport incident, which went viral. And when videos go viral from Las Vegas in this way, it's never good for tourism. That's for sure.
All right, so now as we move along, let's turn our attention to the federal prosecutor of Nevada. It's been a long time since we've actually had somebody filling that role permanently, and it's a really weird situation. Melinda, what exactly is going on with that?
Yeah, this is super bizarre. So I'm very interested in hearing our resident legal expert's take on this. Nevada's been without
one of the many reasons why he's here,
which I love, and I trust David.
I thought it was my blue eyes, but okay, keep going.
His good looks and his blue eyes, definitely. Nevada's been without a Senate-confirmed U.S. attorney for an incredibly long time, and the delay may be allowing the Trump administration's controversial interim pick, Shigal Chadha, to remain in charge indefinitely. I'm really curious to hear what your take is on this. The White House nominated respected Las Vegas attorney George Kalesis for the permanent position in February. But now we're sitting here 5 months later, and his nomination has not received its first vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee. With Catherine Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen, they've met with him, with Kalesis, but they're still reviewing his nomination. And so while this is all going on, Chadha continues to lead Nevada's U.S. Attorney's Office, even though a lower federal court previously ruled that her continued service was unlawful. So this could be an instance where, the Trump administration has appealed that process. But, we're seeing now that a Trump-backed Chadha, very outspoken conservative Chadha, is now sitting in the seat, which he's actually not lawfully allowed to occupy, while another pick is being confirmed. So is this a bit of strategy, David? Like, this feels not right.
I mean, once again, we're talking about strategies that don't seem right. It seems like a lot of that comes out of this administration. Whether you agree with the end goal or not, the process seems very convoluted and often contradictory. And yeah, that's what's happening here. Look, another disclosure, and I always do this because Las Vegas is such a small town, and we all know that. And if you grew up here, you're going to have various conflicts all the time. I did used to work for George Kalesis' law firm some years ago, and I know George quite well, and I could say without any hesitation that he is eminently qualified to this job. He's probably one of the most qualified people in all of Nevada to do this job. He's a very smart man, and, he is a nonpartisan type of guy, right? He's not, leaning heavy one way or the other per se. I'm sure he has his own views. That said, yeah, it is unprecedented. He is verging on the longest amount of time before someone has been considered for confirmation ever. And it does seem like a weird strategy using Mr. Kalesis as kind of like a holding pattern person so that they could keep Chadha, and I know Segal as well. She used to be a defense attorney at one point. In that role, even though there is all sorts of litigation going on and a strong suggestion that she shouldn't be in that role because she can't get through the confirmation process. Because I do know for a fact, and publicly, Senators Cortez Masto and Rosen have both said that they're coming out against her, which would normally call the doom of a nomination for a U.S. attorney. Look, can that office run without a actual permanent head in place? Probably. I mean, a lot of people don't know what a U.S. attorney's office for a district like Nevada does anyway. I mean, they prosecute a lot of cases, everything from DUIs out at Lake Mead to more sophisticated sort of frauds and things of that nature. Sometimes people in possession of child pornography or like really big crime sort of events. But all those are moving forward anyway, So it doesn't make a lot of sense that they want maybe one or the other, and they're not really helping the other's cause. I think we do need a little bit of certitude as to who the U.S. attorney is, because they can shape some things and how certain prosecutions go. You can't have two chefs in charge of the same pot, So that's kind of where we are. It is unprecedented, though.
How does it get out of limbo, David? Where do we go from here? What are next steps? Could this just go on forever? Or,
I mean, theoretically, it could. At some point, the Kalesis nomination becomes cold, and then they send it back, and they'd have to start all over again. In the interim, speaking of interim, Shigal Chadha would be the interim almost in perpetuity until they kind of figure out how to do it, which also is, again, subject of its own litigation. So just a big cluster F, as they say in the legal trade.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to throw it out there, David, because like you said, this could just turn into a perpetual cycle where, they're both kind of kept in limbo and she's kept in place this entire time, and we still don't know, what's going to happen in terms, or whether or not she was legally able to be in this role, and conflicts of interest. It's just so convoluted. So Melinda, with that in mind, knowing that the future is very murky, how do you wrap your head around where this does go?
I think much like the topic that we were discussing with ICE is we're coming up into, very important, we're coming into the midterms, and I just sit here and I wonder how this is going to play and how people vote overall. I mean, for me, that's the biggest question mark here are people seeing red flags through all of this in the judicial process, in the democratic process, and, what we've come to know from our day-to-day lives? Do people see red flags in all of this? And that's what I'm really curious about. And that's what I'll know when people go to vote, right? That's where we'll see it. So I think that there's all these issues, but there's also the bigger issue is how people are going to vote.
All right, so as we transition to our third and final topic, rents as a whole in Vegas continue to rise. A new study from Zumper actually found that rents in Las Vegas have increased nearly 20% faster than Los Angeles over the last 7 years. Now, here's a look at the numbers to dig into it all. In June of 2019, the median one-bedroom apartment in Las Vegas cost $1,053 per month, which is right on par with what I got my first apartment here for in Vegas. It was actually down in Henderson, but in Southern Nevada back in 2019, it was for $1,1050 a month. So that tracks with kind of what my experience was. And today, that same apartment apparently runs about $1,235 a month, which is a 17% increase. Meanwhile, in LA, rents have actually dropped 1.3% over that same period, which I think is shocking when we all hear about how expensive it is to live in California and everything. They're like, wait, what? So rents have gone down since then? And when you compare Las Vegas to other similar cities like us, the gap's even crazier. Denver rents are actually down slightly. Salt Lake City and Portland are up less than 3%. So obviously a big difference than us. So the big question is why is rent so much higher in Las Vegas? Researchers say that it comes down to supply and demand. Places like Denver and Salt Lake, they built a ton of new housing projects to keep up with their population growth, which kept rents in check. Here in Las Vegas, we haven't apparently kept pace with building new units to match the demand. And that gap is showing up directly in what locals are paying every month now with those inflated prices. When you kind of look at this as a whole, to kind of put it in perspective, it could be worse because other cities that have seen bigger rent increases, in particular Austin, at 9% and Miami at a whopping 46%. Obviously Austin, that's not as high as us, but they're at least one of those ones that's seen a big jump. But Miami is a shocking one, 46% since 2019. That is a massive increase and just crazy to wrap your head around. But the thing that I think is kind of interesting, again, like I was saying, when I first moved here, my first apartment I rented was right in line with this, $1,050 a month. I'm curious, David and Melinda, did you guys remember what the cost of living was for you the first time that you were here in Las Vegas, or first apartment that you had here, what that ran you?
I'm going to age myself now. Growing up here in Las Vegas, my parents lived only in apartments, and I know that they were very, very low cost because we were very poor. So, and it was kind of workforce housing at the time, which was a lot more important back in the day. Our apartments were right behind one of the casinos. My dad worked in the casino, so we could walk to work because we didn't have the car. So, affordability was definitely a thing in the 70s for a lot of people. My very first apartment, because when I had to kind of move back here after school and look for a place, again, dating myself, this would have been the early 90s, and I paid $650 a month out in Green Valley.
That's crazy.
My dark years in Green Valley, Jesse.
Your dark years in Green Valley. Yeah, before you saw the light move downtown, I see that. Melinda, do you remember what you paid for your first apartment in Vegas?
Yeah, I was living with my parents for quite some time because they, have lived here. And then, I think it was in the Las Vegas Country Club. I think I was paying about $1,400 a month for a townhouse in Las Vegas Country Club. It was quite large, but I paid that rent consistently for about 10 years because I was renting from a private owner. So because I was a good tenant, they never raised my rent. So that was like some of the flexibility that we had. It was not owned by a large, VC or any type of investment group, which we've seen is, has driven up the rents because a lot of the real estate has been purchased by these large investment firms. And they kind of standardized and jacked up all the rents, right around COVID time, which has been, listen, the inaffordability of of rent directly affects everything in this town, and that is something that we're now grappling with that we didn't deal with before. We didn't deal with it before 5, 6 years ago, before COVID.
No, it's tough when, so much of your income is devoted to just literally a place to live. You know what I mean? And I think that's just a problem in America as a whole, I think, and many cities around the country. I think that needs to change. Will it ever? I don't know. But I think it is kind of interesting when we look at this. While the 17% figure, as we said, almost 20% increase from 2019 to now is shocking when you see it, it seems like we're kind of actually moving in the right direction, because obviously we saw like the height of all this was like 2022, 2023. We actually are year over year moving in the right direction. Rent actually has gone down. I remember right about 2.2%. Yeah, a recent study said that 2.2% our rent has gone down year over year. In May of 26, at least, the median price was $1,447 just for rent in general here in Las Vegas, which I think maybe that gives us a little bit of hope. I'm curious for you guys, does that when you look at the year-to-year numbers, or do you look at it in the 7-year period? How do you wrap your head around comparing those two figures about our housing situation?
Well, I just think that Las Vegas isn't wise when it comes to, planning as it relates to the availability of housing, or coming up with good restraints on things like Melinda said. This corporate ownership of so many properties, including rental properties, the sort of chaos caused by Airbnb, the fact that materials have gone up in cost to build stuff. And, that's not going away here in, our isolated part of the Mojave Desert, like to transport stuff here. Like there are so many different factors. And let's not forget, in the last legislative session, there were a ton of bills that got passed to address sort of this housing accessibility, housing affordability. And virtually all those were vetoed by Joe Lombardo. And then Joe Lombardo, and I see the TV ads, there's like, he is the king of affordable housing because of a bill that was passed that is supposed to encourage more building for that supply demand. Look, it's all so confusing, but I just don't think that there's a lot of folks at our government agencies from the lowest, from the municipalities on up, who are really doing any sort of comprehensive, holistic approach to not just building out housing in Las Vegas, but just kind of coming to terms with the fact that people are going to keep moving here because of all the things that Las Vegas does offer.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a real disconnect, Jesse, and I just don't know year over year how it gets better until people start working together and being more thoughtful at doing it.
Yeah, that's the thing that we find ourselves in an interesting spot, because relative to many other places, particularly California and Los Angeles, where so many people are moving here from, we are still a great bargain for a lot of people. And then on top of that, a no state income tax state as well. So like that's one of the things that, and it's tough for the people that are here, because it comes to a point where you're like, okay, am I going to have to go somewhere like, I don't know, maybe a Montana, one of the Dakotas or something like that, in order to take advantage of the same situation that people are moving to here, just in another state. And that puts people in a really tricky situation. So I'm curious, though, as we see more building happening, obviously down in the Arts District, we see more apartment complexes coming up. I believe we've got 2, right, that are going to be opening fairly soon here. Another one closer towards just the downtown area as a whole, I think, is planning on being built within the next year or so. Like we've seen this development happen there, and I think all around the valley as well. In Southwest, too, a bunch of new apartment complexes popping up. Like, are we trending in the right direction in terms of having more housing available to us? Do you think that will help, Melinda, or does that kind of just continue to drive prices up as these seemingly are more luxury places as well that are coming up?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's affordable housing. And that's as we've known from historically in most communities, that's a dirty word. It just hasn't, it is creating the right balance of affordable housing with rent control and other types of infrastructure to create livable communities. And that's just not something that we currently have in place. And, they're going to get market rate, those apartment buildings that you're referencing. So they don't have, to my knowledge, any part of them that's dedicated to affordable housing. So, I think the best thing that we can do right now is look at cities where it's working and try to elect leaders that are in line with creating those processes and infrastructures, because we're heading down a very dark path.
Yeah, stressing about rent and just the cost of living is really tough. You don't want to see that continue to happen going forward. And so I guess we'll have to revisit these as the years move on and as the apartment complexes are finished and maybe the supply reaches, a similar level of the demand here in Las Vegas. So again, much like the other topics we talked about today, kind of wait and see mode, but no doubt you guys will be with us along the way to do that. So thank you both for your input on today's show and your comments on everything that's going down here in Las Vegas.
Oh, Jesse, I don't want to wait and see anymore. I want to go out and do. Someone tell me what to do.
We want to know now.
Let's do it.
Someone tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Let's go.
Coming up, I'm chatting with Holly Erker from IS Luxury about the preservation versus renovation debate in Las Vegas vintage homes and why the original details in these mid-century houses are really worth fighting for. Hey there, Jesse here with Holly Erker, Luxury Real Estate Advisor at IS Luxury. Holly, welcome back into CityCast Las Vegas. How's it going?
Jesse, I'm excited to be back. You guys are so great.
Yeah, these ones are always fun. And again, this one hits a lot closer to home than some of the other ones have, just because I am in the process of, and we'll call it revitalizing a vintage home, because obviously there's a real big debate going on in the vintage home market right now between buyers who just want to gut a house, the flippers, and buyers who want to protect everything original. Where do you kind of come down on that debate?
I think the perfect answer is a blend of both. You want to look at what the operating systems of the house are and how old those are. Those are the non-negotiables to repair.
You're talking about like plumbing and electrical and stuff?
Those things are going to be the guts and the heart and the bones of the house. So what we are wanting to preserve is the soul of the house. So yeah, exactly to your point and to the question is replace your HVAC, your plumbing, electrical, and even in some cases, the windows.
No, yeah, the windows was one of the first things I did when I moved in, because I remember for my house, you could stick your hand through like where the slider was. It was the original ones. My home was built in 1960, and I was like, yeah, no, in the Vegas heat, if I could stick my hand through there, God knows how much my electrical bill will go up, with that. So I was like, that needs to be fixed. Windows are a big one. Plumbing's always a little iffy, I know, with the cast iron pipes and things like that. Electrical, what is it, the loop? I forget exactly what they're called, the wiring that are in a lot of these homes, but that one,
two-prong loops.
Those are scary as hell. So I'm like, yeah, update that stuff. I did the guts of it all. So definitely want to make sure those things are good. But like you said, it's not just everything that you just paint a broad brush to. There's a real framework that you have in place to go through like the irreplaceable versus just the old. So can you walk us through how that plays out as you're walking through a vintage listing and kind of working with folks as they make their way through it?
You want to keep the house appealable to the market, but it's not the mass market. We're going for a niche market. And you want to walk through that property and getting it prepared for the listing as to where's the opportunity to maybe touch up paint, to if there's a need to repaint a fresh room, do you go with the color it already has? I don't always think it's necessary to go to a white blank canvas. Buyers need the visual aspect of it. They need the visual stimulation to help imagine themselves in that property. So you want to work with what the house has. You don't need to like go through and paintbrush everything to it. It's not necessary. But I look at things of like, what excites me? What do I see when I walk in? I'm like, I haven't seen this before, or I haven't seen this in this market in a long time. Terrazzo floors, they are such a durable product, or hardwood floors, original hardwood floors. They're easy to restore. They're easy to get a light brush to. The key is not going in and replacing older products with cheaper products.
Yes.
You want to work with what the house has, because that's the story of what people are buying. Actually replacing items with cheaper products devalues the house versus actually increasing the house. So again, terrazzo, breezeway block, clear story windows, original built-ins. It's not all about the new necessarily. If it functions and it is a complement to the property already, then just work with it.
Yeah, no, I think a good way to put that is like match the craftsmanship of the home. You look at some of the carpentry in a lot of these older homes.
Oh my gosh,
mine's got a ton of the built-ins, and it's crazy. Some of the joinery they use and things like that, just gorgeous stuff. So like you have to make sure that you match that. Otherwise, it's going to look like, a Frankenstein version of the house there where you're kind of piecing it together. So like, what are some of the ones when you're like non-negotiables? These are the things that you absolutely have to keep if you're going to go through this process of revitalizing. That's, again, how I like to refer to it, as revitalizing, because you're bringing it back to its like real roots.
You want to walk through the house and feel like, does this era of the house feel new or does it feel old? And I get it. Like, there's some things that are like Golden Girls grandma chic that may not fit in every house. Yeah. So you want to look at that. It's in the right cases, the floor plans, they don't build them like they used to. You've got window frames that they don't make them anymore. Certainly you can retrofit new windows depending on what suppliers you use. That's the biggest thing, is how do you work with the house and not against it?
So this preservation of doing this stuff, like, does it actually pay off at resale, or is it just kind of a labor of love where these homes turn into like money pits? Because I hear some people say that, but that seems like a really horrible view to look at it. Like, please tell us that it pays off. Tell me, as someone who's doing this, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
From my experience to yours, is I would name myself a master of this niche 100% if it's done correctly. The examples that I use is, you have a beautiful vintage house with 2.5-inch real wood parquet that gets demolished and removed with a $1 per square foot laminate. Those are the examples that devalue a home. Taking out brass gold hardware and replacing it with something off Amazon that's black and matte, but it's trendy and everybody is doing it. Those are the things that devalue the homes. Buyers come into these properties with an imagination, with an excitement, because these neighborhoods tell a story, the homes tell a story. And those elements in the home is the soul of what people are buying. And sure, new might be great, but that's not necessarily great in all of these areas either.
I love these types of conversations, so I love each and every time that we have you on. So Holly, thank you so much. Today was another one of the fun ones.
Thank you, Jesse and team. I appreciate all of you.
And look, for anybody out there, if you want to explore mid-century and vintage Vegas homes and get in on the fun of what Holly and I are talking about here, or you just want to connect with Holly directly, head to isluxury.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening to CityCast Las Vegas. That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our free morning newsletter as well. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Until then, though, take care.